Hi everyone, this video is a conversation about potentially the most important thing I've ever learnt over the nearly 6 years of being a Blender YouTuber. This started as a second channel video, but I thought the conversation was so relevant now and it would be so valuable to other creators that I've promoted it to the main channel. It starts with answering a question of why am I making random pointless videos on the second channel when there are really big tools and massive projects I need to make for so many people in the Blender community. I feel like I've received a massive education on YouTube over these years, so let me share some experience and let's just cut straight into the conversation. Remember a while ago, I did a video about motivation. Well, actually, you probably don't because not many people watched it. Still one of the best videos I've ever made on the main channel. Referenced later in a Ben Levin video about how to build a passionate following. I think that was the one. Basically, I'd spent such a long time after we moved down to the coast in a bit of a rut that I couldn't understand. It was like an executive dysfunction issue. But it was important for me at that point to step back from trying to force myself to make main channel YouTube videos because I knew that if I kept forcing it, it would become too formulaic in the way that it would be the same thing all the time and that no new products or anything culturally useful for the Blender community would be made. So I stepped back from the channel a bit, spent months investing time in trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and came back with some important conclusions. That video is why we now have new products like Afterglow and Hex Scatter and stuff like that. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. It takes a lot of time and effort to figure out how to get over your executive dysfunction. And by effort, I do mean effort. It takes training. And that's what I'm doing now with these little videos, and I'll explain that. So one conclusion I came to was that cultural value, again, when I say cultural, I mean if you have a community, anything that's made in that community for that community, I would consider culture. So like the Blender culture is all stuff relating to the Blender community. What's made inside it, what we celebrate, the memes, that kind of stuff. Cultural value comes through experimentation. A lot of people start making content like YouTube videos because they experiment and they have fun, and that is value that then gets shared with people. The problem is when we have these algorithmic feedback loops where it says, oh, your last experimentation was the worst you've done out of your last 10 videos. It's conditioning you to do something that you may not have done before, which is look at some of your experimentation as worse than other experiments. Now, when I say that's something you might not have done before, okay, so when you're like a kid and you're just drawing and having fun, how often, or you were drawing with like crayon or something, did you stop and go, this one is the 5th worst out of all the ones I've done? Like, unless you were obsessed with ranking, maybe ranking was your hyperfixation. If that's not the case, then you probably never did. You just drew, you made something, you showed it to mum and dad, and they said, wow, that's lovely, and put it on the fridge, unless you've had a dysfunctional upbringing. But that's the thing. Creation, for the sake of creation, creates value, in my mind. So we walk into the content creation game with honest intentions and a keen feeling to experiment. And then over time, we slowly and lightly get punched down into a little formulaic bag. Over time, from what I've felt, this creates executive dysfunction. And the thing is, we're not entirely sure that it's happening to us at the time. We will have a feeling something's wrong, but you don't know that it's actually something wrong with like you, or is it the platform, or is it something else in life that's got you upset that you're kind of attributing to this? It's like sometimes I feel anxious for a reason, and sometimes I feel anxious just because I've had caffeine or something, and my body is just chemically anxious, and then I try and attribute a reason to it afterwards. The problem is when you release something you spent time on, and it says, this is your worst video you've done out of your last 10, no one's watching it, what are you doing? Here are some tips for how to pick better topics. Then it creates this weird emotional dissonance thing where you feel happy about something you've made, and YouTube is designed to tell you that you're a piece of shit. It's designed that way to encourage people to try harder. And it doesn't matter how many like creator middlemen people are there on like the dashboard videos or Twitter telling people, actually just make genuine content and people will come to you. And YouTube's designed to share your best ideas with the relevant audience. All that stuff is just crap. It's such a disconnect between like the design of the platform, how it's designed to present the creator information, and this forward-facing PR BS that's designed to keep people from complaining. But there is a way you can deal with it. And that's kind of what I was spending so many months investing time into figuring out, like, how can I resolve my inability to start new projects and actually make new projects? Because I feel like it's going to be a waste of time if I'm not doing community roundups or the most clickbaity Blender update titles I can do. I resolved the idea as, instead of thinking of myself as one person, to think of myself as two people, the superposition, if you like, the artist and the reporter. I made a promise to myself that, again, it takes a lot of training to actually put this into practice. The artist side of me will just make anything that comes to mind without guilt, without second thought, and without doubt in the moment whenever I want, just because I feel like it, without thinking about YouTube. Hard not to think about YouTube. Effectively, just do. The other person is the reporter. The reporter, most importantly, cannot under any circumstances tell the artist what to do or how to change. The reporter's only job is to look at the pool of all things that the artist ended up making and then decide to tell a story with that. So how does that kind of mix in what usually happens on YouTube? A lot of people start out as the artist, so they're making anything under their own intuition, and then kind of almost like in a straight line, they've made something and then they share it, and then they get the feedback back, and then from there they kind of feel bad and then maybe adjust, even if it's only subconsciously. So the artist is the one that's taking all that on board and then changing direction. The paradigm with two people says that instead of the artist receiving feedback, the artist should never receive feedback, because that is how you turn value, cultural value, into formula, because the total sum of all feedback turns someone into an amalgamated mess of everyone's most generalized preferences, which is why you get so many channels that start off as experimental value turning into generic formulaic fluff, 5 best this, 10 best this, you won't believe, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of flies in the face of this maybe, I don't know, hardline, professional, again, a bit of a BS attitude that as an artist, you should always be on board and critique. If you want to be professional and get hired, it's all about critique. Again, there's so much BS in all these perspectives. For this line of work, you need to be able to self-reflect and understand the flow. What is value coming from you, and how do you protect that, not just from other people, but also from yourself? Every micro decision you make in the process of which next art piece am I going to do? What next social media post will I do? What next video will I do? Every one of these is an opportunity for a doubt from your previous experience with interacting with a platform to come in and kill it before it starts, or turn it into something more generic. So in the artist-reporter model, the reporter is the one that deals with the front line, like a war reporter, I suppose you can think about it like that. The reporter has taken stuff from the artist's bowl. You can imagine it any way you like. I tend to call it a pool. Taken stuff from the artist's pool and gone, okay, here's an interesting story for you. And then the reporter looks and listens, and with the feedback the reporter gets, instead of passing that on to the artist, the reporter just thinks, okay, maybe I can present what the artist made in a slightly different way next time to make it more palatable for the audience. That's my job. It's not my job to interfere with what the artist is doing. Now that kind of paradigm doesn't apply to like other industries. Again, if you're working in a direct artist-client business model, then you as the artist are definitely responsible for like the feedback and the back and forth there, because you're kind of collaborating towards this final point. But this weird thing of I have no idea who the hell's watching, I have no idea who's buying the stuff I'm making, and also I don't work for any of you. Technically, I don't work for anyone. By definition, I'm self-employed. I'm registered with HMRC in the UK as self-employed. I work for myself legally. That means technically I'm only responsible for reporting back to myself and HMRC to pay tax and all of that. Technically speaking, I don't need to interact with anyone. Like, I never have to reply to any comment. I don't have to reply to any email. And often I leave people on red forever. Oftentimes I get sponsor requests and I just don't respond to them. Or if I do respond to them and then they try and negotiate, I think, I can't be bothered. And then I just never respond. Like, obviously it's a privilege to be in that position. But obviously when what you have is given to you by the platform, as given by the audience on that platform, watching your videos, providing ad revenue, and purchasing the products, then you feel beholden onto that or onto them, and that if you take a step in the wrong way, then all of that's going to go away. But that's where the problem lies. That fear is the controlling factor that makes this is your 8th worst video out of the last 10 so effective. It's a fear tactic to continue making content to give more space for advertisements on the platform. There are so many other better ways, I think, that different platforms, not just YouTube, could be encouraging people just to experiment and create. We know you can make multiple channels on YouTube, and that's great as well. So if people have niche interests, they can kind of diversify them and split them up. But it's so compartmentalized. Like, it would be nice to have a way to have different topics under one channel that don't annoy the viewers by then shoving alternative interests into their subfeed or by notifying them if they're not interested. It'd be nice if audience members could subscribe to different topics within one channel, or if we're working on something else, like if I was doing my studio videos on my main channel, it'd be nice to have a different column somewhere. And maybe every now and again, if someone hasn't subscribed to that topic, it might just ask a regular viewer, hey, Curtis is also doing these. Would you maybe be interested in this? If not, don't worry, we won't show them to you. And then treat the analytics for both of these topics separately. So rather than a new subject video being compared against every other main video ever made, including like the ones with millions of views, it would be treated carefully and respectfully as its own thing, affecting its own recommendations within its own topic. So the question at the start of this video was, why am I making random low resolution videos, as I call them, about just odd things I'm doing in my new studio space that don't really have much effect over anyone else. They're not super helpful to anyone. And it's time I could be spent doing more important things or more important updates. All of those things I do want to get onto, and this space is supposed to make that easier. The point is, I've just moved in here and I'm training myself. It turns out that training yourself into a state of mind where you don't get in your own way is half internal and half external, an internal locus and an external locus of control. Your environment does play a part. It's not the whole story, but it is a part of the story. One of the very first things I did in here was make something that lets me move around the space and record freely without much mental thought. I set up a hot swap system to move recording files back and forth, and right now I'm just training myself to speak freely, just to move around, do random things, and not think about it too much, because thinking about it is the artist telling themselves to stop, if that makes sense. I'm training myself not to get in my own way, even if the content at the moment looks pointless. The idea is that the more I train myself to not get in my own way, and the more I feel comfortable with that, then as I shift my focus to Blender, I will feel more fulfilled and I'll be able to provide more value back, effectively undoing the teaching that is formulaic and worry-filled content creation. And it's not to say that all formulaic stuff is bad. So let's take an example. I have my community roundup series, right? And literally we just take some of the best things that are happening in the Blender community and I'm sharing them. Now, I have always taken an approach, which I know people appreciate because you let me know, that I'm going to do research on every single one of these things and say what I personally like about it and what I think you will get value from. And I think that shows through the videos, which is why people like them. However, just talking about things happening in the community is so easy to automate, which is why we are now seeing AI generated videos doing exactly the same thing. And if they're not fully AI generated, they're text to speech with editing afterwards. And that kind of thing is becoming so low effort. So now I look at that and I think if I keep making community roundup videos, are people going to think that I'm just trying to do low effort stuff? I'm actually trying to put effort into it, but now it's got a bad rep. You know, I did have a comment from someone on, I think it was Reddit, that was like, remember when Curtis was just a mild-mannered Blender user and now they're just making cookie cutter videos in multicolor painted fingernails? They're not painted at the moment. Let me fix that. So the thing about the artist reporter paradigm is that when it comes to things like talking about other people's content, you are not the artist. You are just a reporter. So you can take from the pool of what other people have made and then talk about that. And yes, that may be low effort, but I think there's something a bit deeper about it. Bit messy, but whatever. I personally think we instinctively, as creators, know that we don't want our artistic side to be suppressed and made uncomfortable. So over time, we gravitate towards talking about other people's content so that we don't have to confront the feedback that our experimentation is of no value. Because again, as a kid, when you're just doing a random drawing, you're not thinking about your drawing in terms of value. You're just making for the fun of it. So that's another reason I think people gravitate towards formulaic models, including myself, because rather than make something that's new and impressive and actually utilizes my skills and actually teaches people how to do things that are interesting and then see that it's the worst performing thing of the year, I would rather just speak about someone else's work, because then if that does bad, I don't have to feel so bad about it. And if I'm doing a video that's talking about Blender's new update and the new features, and if all the comments are negative, then it doesn't matter because it's not my work and I don't have to feel bad about it. And obviously, I don't like that. All of this is just a mess. We've only had the internet for I don't know how many decades. I was born in 1996, so I know I'm not old, and I know the older people in my audience love to tell me that. I'm 28, I think, but I do remember the early days of dial-up and the wacko shit that was on the internet back then. We are not mentally equipped to deal with this. And like I said, we're trying to take traditional concepts about creation and the value of a person and what they make and then apply them into this new space. So whereas maybe before, it was more usual for the artist to be the front line and to take on board all the feedback and to change themselves as part of that process. Now, with self-employed independent creators, where we are the show, it turns out that is a really bad idea. But there is no training manual to deal with that. And YouTube certainly isn't doing it. This is the kind of stuff that YouTube should be teaching people, rather than doing the, oh, we noticed you're complaining about the algorithm again. Here's a generic video to try and dispel all your conspiracies, because we don't want you feeling bad about the platform. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking what I've learned and I'm taking my time. I'm in it for the long game. I'm training myself. I'm feeling what's going on. I'm doing low resolution things to get into a flow of not inhibiting myself. If that makes sense? What's the term for that? It's not inhibition. Hibition. I'm just filling it out with random stuff and then pointing it back towards Blender. We're doing it carefully, not forcefully. There's already stuff I know what I'm going to do next for the Blender videos. Not going to say it because we learned that lesson. Never say before you do, or show, don't tell. But I think it's a good practice. Trying to do daily, if you like, things that aren't necessarily like focused grind set stuff. Oh boy, grind set and masculinity. Let's not talk about that in this video, but I could definitely give a lecture about that in the Blender community. Anyway, if you made it this far through the video, thank you for watching. This was supposed to be a second channel video. Depending on the edit, I may or may not promote it. Maybe as a point, if you've been watching me for a long time, you'll know that every now and again I would throw in a random video to like shake up the algorithm a bit, which I guess is the point of this. So maybe this could be like one of those chapter videos where we shake things up and then get back to making useful stuff. If you're here for Blender, check out the Blender products. Afterglow, oh my god. So Afterglow is one of the biggest things I've made recently, my lighting product, and look at my studio. So excited. I finally get like an actual lighting setup that I can touch. It's so haptic. It's so liminal. It's like an office environment. This is like that hard foam stuff. So excited. Anyway, if you made it this far through the video, put the unicorn emoji in the comments, preferably along with an actual comment telling me what you think, because the reporter will be paying attention and that will show me which of you made it this far. So thanks for watching. Have a great day and I will see you next time.